Hello, welcome to the Rant, and today I have some great news. Scratch finally updated the studios and removed all the problems with them. They fixed my two biggest problems with them. The first was that you could only see a limited amount of projects in the studio, but now they added a load more button, so you can see every project that's ever been added to the studio, as far as I've tested, which is awesome. It's just like the Explore tab, but for studios. And of course, the biggest problem with the studio is that if you are a curator and a bunch of other curators go and also join the studio, then it'll be impossible to leave the studio because all the other names will overwrite yours and there'll be no more leave studio button. But now you can search up your own username in a search box or just scroll through all of the names because now it can load an infinite amount of them. So you don't have to worry about curating studios and being stuck in them anymore. So yeah, if you're the owner of a studio and someone asks to be removed, then you can just search up their name in a text box and remove them. Super convenient. And they updated how the studio looks. So now it looks more similar to the Explore tab as opposed to before, when it looked kind of weird. Now it's more wide, so you can fit more information on one screen. Before it was very cut off at the ends. There wasn't a whole lot to see, but now it looks a lot better. And that's pretty much all the new things about the studios. So I highly encourage you to go to your favorite studio and just check around a bit, see all the new stuff, click everything, see what stuff does. It looks great. Thank you, Scratch Team. This has been Billy Nacho's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Hello, welcome to Billy Nacho's Rant, part 2 of our game week, which I know I just did an episode like 15 minutes ago, but that was an important one because Scratch just got an update. Anyway, second topic of Game Week is going to be retro games, old games, classic games, whatever you want to call them. You know what I'm talking about. And specifically, Scratch's impact on those kinds of games. Comparing the average Scratch game to the average NES game will give you some similarities, but a lot of differences too. Obviously, they're similar because both Scratch and NES cartridges have limited storage room. You can only do so much with them before they run out of memory. Although, I'm almost positive that Scratch has more than those cartridges, because Scratch came out like 40 or something years after. And another obvious similarity is that both Scratch and those cartridges couldn't do true 3D. They could maybe simulate 3D. There were multiple NES games that tried to get the 3D vibe, and there are multiple Scratch games that also try to do that, but it's not really 3D. A big difference between them is that Scratch is a digital thing, while cartridges of old games are physical. Unless you put a Scratch game onto a CD, in which case there wouldn't be a difference between them. But who does that? Who puts a Scratch game on a CD? And my personal favorite similarity between the two is that both Scratch and those old NES games started something big. Like, today, if someone did Scratch and they were interested in becoming a programmer, and they got, like, familiar with Scratch, because that's the point of Scratch, and then they learned how to code stuff, then they can move on to bigger things. Same way the NES started a bunch of famous Nintendo franchises, like Super Mario, or Metroid, Castlevania, Bubble Bobble. What do you mean no one knows what Bubble Bobble is? That game's fun. And probably the biggest similarity between them is that even though they're primitive, they can still be fun. There are plenty of games on Scratch that are fun to play, and there are plenty of retro games that are also fun to play, obviously. Why do you think that people would still be playing them 30 or 40 years later? So yeah, I guess that concludes day 2 of Game Week. Come back tomorrow where we'll be discussing, well, I don't really know because I don't have a schedule for these kinds of things. I just hope that I could come up with an idea for the next episode before tomorrow. This has been Billy Nacho's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed.
What? Am I bothering you or something?
Yes, actually. I'm trying to continue the game week, which will be difficult if you're going to stand there, and most likely interrupt.
What's game week?
Every day this week, I'll be covering a topic related to video games.
Ah, cool. I myself have some experience with game creation.
Oh, that's good to hear. Then maybe you can actually add to the conversation.
I've done voice acting in thousands of games.
How is that possible?
Whenever someone uses text-to-speech in a game or animation, I have to go over and record those lines. It's hard work but fulfilling.
And I still don't believe you. People use text-to-speech in projects all the time. How do you find time to come over here and annoy me?
My schedule consists of only voice acting and annoying squirrels.
Wow, what a great honor. Well, I guess since you're here, what are your thoughts on video games?
I find them to be entertaining. I, however, can only run very simple games.
I didn't know you could run any games.
I can. Stuff like Pong and Solitaire. Nothing interesting or anything.
My question is why? Why can a robot run video games on itself anyway?
Just in case I get bored.
How can a robot get bored?
I don't know.
Seriously, answer the question. How can a robot get bored?
Because I have many things to do and stuff.
You mean the 2 things that you said you do?
Hey, I can do a third thing too. End your show.
No, you can't really do that. Only I can end my show. I get to decide when it... Oh, hi. As you probably know, Scratch recently had an update that changed studios. Only an hour after that update released, I made a project with my opinions on it. The stuff that I liked. Because I thought it was a good update. And it does have some great features in it that I've been wanting for a long time. And I won't get into that. If you want to see my first impressions, then go watch episode 111. And obviously, it's a update that changes stuff. So of course, people aren't going to like it at first. But I didn't realize that the people who don't like this update actually have some pretty good points. One thing that this studio update changes is the fact that now moderators cannot edit the description of a studio, which may not sound like a big deal. However, some studios, the whole point of them is that moderators can use the studio description to talk to each other as sort of a chat system, which of course is removed with this update, as well as the fact that there can now only be 40 moderators in a single studio, which pretty much highly devalues being a moderator in any studio. Also meaning that now the owner of a studio is basically the only person who can do anything with the studio, making it harder to be the owner of a popular studio, as I know some people are. Also, apparently, some people are saying that banned people from studios are being re-added as part of the studio sort of reset that the update required, which that's not really the Scratch team's fault. That's just, I think it would have happened even if the studio update wasn't such a controversial thing. And another point that I don't find as important is some people don't like the new look of studios, which that's just your opinion. It's not going to convince the Scratch team to change anything. I think they're going to stick with the new design. And for those people who say that it's too zoomed in, you can always just Control- to zoom out a bit. And if you zoom out a couple times, it'll look just like the old studio format, but with the new color palette. But obviously, one of the most annoying things that is removed in this update is the ability to invite your followers to studios. Now you have to type in every single username individually, which was an awful idea. Whoever thought of this? Why? How is this better? Sure, it reduces studio spam, but now it kind of just reduces studios as a whole, because who's going to go through the trouble of typing out everybody's name just so that they can join whatever studio you're making? All this update needed was 2 features from it. Being able to remove yourself from studios, and a load more button. That's all the studio update needed to be, and maybe the new visuals. And I'm sure less people would have a problem with it. But they had to remove all this stuff. They didn't have to, they chose to. So this update in total, 2 good things, 1 neutral thing, and about a dozen bad things. So yeah, please Scratch team, try again. Make a studio update part 2 that just removes all the removals. This should have been common sense. Don't remove stuff that people like. So there you go, my true opinion on the studio update. This has been Billy Nacho's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Recently there have been multiple changes to Scratch and how it works. So today, I'm going to be talking about a few things that I wish were in Scratch. Now obviously some of these may not be realistic, but this is just stuff that I think would be cool. The first thing that I thought would be pretty nice is if there was a way to have multiple people working on a project at the same time. Google Slideshow has a feature like this, where you can invite people to help you work on a slideshow, which is useful for school projects, but I think it would be nice in Scratch because doing stuff with friends is fun, and it takes a long time to make a project in Scratch. So production speed would be way higher if you had multiple people working on it. And if this was actually in Scratch, I think that similar to when you remix a project, it credits the original project in the top right of the project page, then I think it should also list the people who worked on the project that were invited to collaborate. The remix thing says, thanks to blank for the original project, blank, but I think the collaborator list would be like, thanks to blank, 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 list off the people who helped for collaborating on this project. And if this were in Scratch, they'd probably put a limit on the amount of people who can work on a project at the same time, so maybe like 3 or 4. Do I think that Scratch will ever actually add this? Maybe. Maybe eventually. It's not too far out there. Unlike my next idea, which is, may not be possible. It would be a new block that would be called, I don't know what it would be called actually. I'll just explain what it does. So this theoretical new block would have a space where you could put a color, kind of like the if touching color block. And what the block would do is that it would make that color in the sprite that the block was in transparent, so you can see through it. So it's kind of like a green screen effect, but you get to pick which color on the sprite you want to be see-through. And I also think that similar to the ghost effect block, the see-through part of the sprite should still be able to interact with other sprites. It's not like it's hidden. So it would be like the ghost effect, but for parts of sprites instead of the whole thing. Now, obviously, I don't think that the Scratch team would ever add this block. It may not even be possible, but it's just fun to think about. I hope you found these ideas interesting. Anyway, this has been Billy Nutcher's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. If you've ever played a first-person shooter video game, then you probably know what Doom is. Even if you haven't played a first-person shooter, you probably still know what Doom is. It's one of the most popular games ever made, and even though it came out almost 30 years ago, people are still making mods for it. But we're not here to talk about mods. I'm here to talk about a particular Doom game that people seem to not really care about. But the people that do care about it say that it's the best of the classic Doom games. The game I'm talking about is called Doom 64, released for the Nintendo 64. And there's your first problem right there. Unfortunately, since this game was released for the Nintendo 64, they had to limit some stuff. Although before we get too far into the changes that they made, I just want to clarify that I will be primarily focusing on the changes to the enemies, as the gameplay in Doom 64 is similar to the first two games, running and gunning through a labyrinth-like space base. So, the first thing you'll notice when you start the game is that it's very dark. Not dark as in, like, scary, but dark as in there's not much light. This becomes a problem when you realize that the first enemy you encounter, the zombie man, who is a zombie with a gun, is identical to that of the shotgunner, which is a zombie with a shotgun. Due to the limitations of the N64, the zombie man and the shotgunner are almost identical, except that the shotgunner has a slightly darker color of armor. However, since the game's so dark, it's impossible to tell the difference between the two of them, making prioritizing the enemies a bit difficult, because you don't know if who you're shooting is the more or less dangerous enemy. However, this is not much of a real problem, since both the zombie man and shotgun guy go down in a single shot from most weapons, so they aren't too big a deal. Now another almost identical duo is the Knight and the Baron. The Knight is a tall, goat-like man with gray tannish skin, while the Baron is the same thing, but with pinkish red skin. Now the original Doom games, it's almost never dark, so you can tell the difference between the two of them. However, one thing that Doom 64 does to make up for the fact that it's hard to tell the difference between two almost identical enemies in the dark is that they change the color of the fireballs thrown by the Knight and Baron. In the original games, both the Baron and Knight threw green orbs of fire. However, in 64, the Knight still throws green fire, but the Baron throws red fire, which is a very smart idea, because then you can tell who you're going to fight. You just have to see literally what they're throwing at you. So, differentiating enemy weapons can help the player in determining what they're going to fight and how they should fight it. But, how will they fight it? Did they make any big changes to the player's weaponry? The answer, yes. Another Nintendo 64 limitation is, I guess, that they couldn't really have too many animations and sprites, or else it wouldn't fit on one cartridge. So, unfortunately, they had to remove the reloading animation from the Super Shotgun. In the original two games, once the player has fired off the weapon, they would break the breech and load in another two shells before clicking the barrel back open and being ready to fire again. Which, if you've seen the animation enough times, you know exactly when your next time to fire is. Unfortunately, in Doom 64, this isn't the case. The weapon just simply jolts back a little bit, making it harder to perfectly time your shots, but it's more of a aesthetic disappointment than a gameplay one. I should also mention the fact that Doom 64 adds a new weapon called the Unmaker. It is a secret weapon that you can find in the secret levels. However, the gimmick with this thing is that it's not really that good unless you play every single secret level and collect every single secret artifact that upgrades the weapon until it basically just destroys everything. I didn't find any of these artifacts when I played the game, so I never used the Unmaker. Another enemy that had a serious design change was the Caco Demon. In the original two games, the Caco Demon is a red ball with an eyeball that shoots ball lightning at you. There's a lot of balls. However, in this game, it is redesigned to be creepier, I guess. It now has arms with chains, and instead of being fleshy red, it is now brownish gray, which pops a lot less. Another aesthetically disappointing point, but it doesn't really affect gameplay too much. The Cacodemon's big brother, the Pain Elemental, also went through a pretty serious change. It now has two mouths and a mullet, for whatever reason. But the design of the Pain Elemental isn't my biggest problem with it. My biggest problem is that it's in the game in the first place. Another Nintendo 64 limitation means that they couldn't fit every single monster from the previous Doom games into 64. So they picked and chose the ones that they felt best suited the games. The three creatures they chose from Doom 2 are the Knight, obviously, the Arachnotron, and the Pain Elemental. Now, the Arachnotron is a robot spider with a big brain. It works identically the way it did in Doom 2, except now it has two guns instead of just one. I like the design, I like how it works, I don't have any problems with it. But seriously, out of all the monsters from Doom 2, they chose the Pain Elemental. Arguably the most annoying one. Let's pay our respects to the monsters that didn't make it into Doom 64. Everyone's favorite tall, skelly boy, the Revenant, unfortunately didn't make the cut. Although I think its skeletal appearance would have suited Doom 64 nicely, as Doom 64 is about being creepy, and what's creepier than a skeleton, am I right? The Chain Gunner served a pretty big part in the classic Doom games, as it was one of the few zombie enemies that actually posed a threat to the player. Although, unfortunately, it didn't make it into Doom 64, which wasn't the biggest problem. Not even Doom 4 had a Chain Gunner, and I think we can all agree that that's one of the best Doom games. The Archvile, my favorite demon in the original Doom games, also didn't make the cut, which it's pretty obvious why. If you've ever played the classic Doom games, you know that the Archvile has a lot of unique mechanics that would have probably taken up a lot of room on the 64 cartridge. So, I think there is little to no chance that this guy would ever have gotten into the original Doom 64, just because of technical limitations. In the original Doom games, the Spider Mastermind served as the Queen of the Demons, commanding them to attack Earth and the player, which is a role in Doom 64 served by a new character called the Mother Demon. So I think if the Mastermind was in Doom 64, it would be kind of redundant, because the monsters already have their ruler, their new ruler. So, sorry, Spider Mastermind, you've been replaced. Plus the fact that the original Doom 64 was played with a Nintendo 64 controller, and it's already hard enough dodging the Mastermind's automatic shotgun bullets. I can't imagine doing it on a weird controller like the N64 one. So yeah, those are the four demons that were left out of the Nintendo 64 release of Doom. If I was working on the game, I would definitely have replaced the Pain Elemental with the Revenant, because the Revenant's cooler. And all the monsters that did get into the game, their new designs, I don't mind. I think they're kind of cool. But now that I've covered some of the biggest gameplay changes in Doom 64, time to finally answer the question, is Doom 64 the best classic Doom game? My answer? In my opinion, not really. I found the first two Doom games to be a lot more fun than Doom 64 was. However, a lot of people will disagree with me, and that's cool too. I can definitely see the appeal of Doom 64 with its atmospheric soundtrack and creepy enemies, but I prefer the action-packed, fun music of the classic Doom 1 and Doom 2. So there you go, my thoughts, opinions, and the changes made in Doom 64. In the future, I'd like to talk about the other Doom games, but until then, this has been Billy Nature's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed.
Why are you still here? Because we're best friends, and that's what friends do. I prefer friends I make myself. But haven't we been making friends since I met you? No, I mean making friends as in actually taking parts in making them myself. Robots can't replace the magic of friendship. As a matter of fact, Monkey, they already have. Well, maybe for you at least, but for me I'd rather have a real animal that I can talk to. Well, I'd rather have you out of my lab. Well, seeing as you can't force me out then, I might as well. You see, robots do make pretty good friends. They do what you want. Speaking of things I do want, robot, take this monkey somewhere far away. Oh, well that did not go as well as I thought it would have. If only there was some friendly person nearby to talk to. Yeah, that would be pretty nice.
Oh, hi Chuck, how you doing?
Ah, yes, perfect. Do you need any help with your show?
We just finished up the show a few minutes ago. You can help tomorrow if you want, though.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Alright, great then. I'll see you tomorrow. So are you just going to wait there, or do you have something else to do? Okay then, if that's what you want to do. Weird. Alright, Chuck, your job is going to be to prevent any unwanted characters from interrupting the show.
Basically, I stand over there and don't do anything.
Well, no. You'd be doing one of the most important jobs.
So important that you haven't had anyone do it before me.
Yes, you're the first. You get to set the reputation for this position.
Well, when you word it like that, it sounds more important.
Great. Go do your job. Hello, welcome to Billy Nutcher's Rant, and today we're going to be talking about search bars. I know I've talked about search bars before, but since the studio update made everything all crazy and everyone's upset, I might as well talk about them again. Why not just take the studio update and replace every studio with just a bunch of search bars? I'm sure that'll solve the problem. Because if everything is search bars, then there won't be any more studios. And if there's no more studios, there's no more studio update to complain about. It's a win-win. Oh hey, did you see that? Up in the air for a second? Yeah, that's the real topic. Because of the fact that Scratch is for all ages, including very young, it's quite difficult to make a good joke. And despite the fact that what I just said was obviously not serious, everything shouldn't be a search bar, some people still might not understand it. And since it's hard to make a joke that lands with every single kind of audience, then the simple solution, just never make jokes, ever. Like, really. If you make a joke, then some people will laugh, but not everyone will laugh. So what's the point of making the joke? It's kind of like when you see those live studio audience things on TV, and they have that big screen that says clap, so it can tell the audience to clap. If you tell the audience when to laugh without actually making a joke, then you don't need to make a joke. However, the last few sentences I just said were jokes. They weren't good jokes, I'll admit that, but they were not serious. So, if you actually want a good tip on how to make the best joke, well, here we go. All you have to do is make the joke funny. You see, funny jokes are generally the most humorous. Wait, where's the flashing "this is a joke" thing? That should have come up. Oh, well now I'm just sad.
Excuse me, can you move to the side a little? No. I've been tasked with protecting this area from morons like you. Come on, please. I just want to go over there. I won't even interrupt anything. If I let you over there, you will most certainly interrupt something. Oh, come on. The squirrel show is not even good enough to interrupt. I do not judge things on how good they are. I judge them on how well I protect them. Well, you must not judge them very high, considering this is your first day on the job. Plus, I've barely gotten any screen time recently. So, just let me on the show. No, I'm not letting you on the show. I don't even know what you are. I'm a dog. You don't look like a dog. Oh yeah? You don't look much like a monkey either. There are yellow dogs, but I'm pretty sure there aren't any monkeys that look like you. Oh yeah? Well, dogs don't wear hats. Neither do monkeys. Plus, I wear a sun hat because it's related to the fact that I was born on the sun. Well, I wear an army helmet because it's related to the fact that I drive a tank. Uh-huh. You say you drive a tank a lot, but I haven't seen it. Well, that's because it doesn't fit in most places. Ugh. The more time we spend arguing, the less time I'll have to interrupt the show. The only one doing any interrupting around here is me. I'm interrupting you, trying to interrupt the show. Great, we both share a common interest, interrupting stuff. So now, you've already interrupted me, So if you could just let me interrupt the show, then we'll be even. Now, yes, now, yes, now, yes, now. Oh wait, actually, the show just finished up. You can interrupt all you want now. Oh, great. Well, now what am I going to interrupt? Well, you could try interrupting the end screen, but I don't see that going too well. What do you mean the end screen?